begin our straight couching, what I've done is I've prepared my fabric with the Mary Ellen's Best Press. I'm going to use the straight stitch foot on my sewing machine, and I've selected one that has the split in the very center of the presser foot. That way I can guide my floss directly through the center of the piece, and it will hold the foot will hold it in place. I'm also going to stitch it down using a pink decorative thread, pink floss on my pink fabric for a low contrast look. For demonstration purposes, I've put a bright blue thread in my sewing machine so that you can see where I'm stitching. The first thing I've done is measure over from the salvaged edge of my fabric about 2 inches. The reason I'm starting 2 inches in is because it gives me a place to hold my fabric, and I'm not going to include the salvage in my pieces, so I don't need to couch anything quite that close. I've used the blue washable marker to draw the line on my fabric. That's my first guideline. The rest of my lines will be measured with my presser foot. Now I'm ready to begin stitching. The first thing I've done is set my sewing machine for a zigzag stitch. I want the stitch to move forward, a zig and a zag, a total amount of about 1/4 of an inch. I want the needle position to move left and right just to either side of the floss. The first thing I'm going to do is take a few stitches in place to secure my thread. And as soon as it begins to zigzag, I'm going to move the needle to the right position and stop. Now I'm going to take my floss and slide it under my presser foot and hold it against the straight line. Now I'm going to stitch forward, holding the floss in front of the split in my foot. If you don't have a split in your foot, you can use a guideline. But I'm going to slowly stitch on either side, my zigzag stitches alternating to the right and left side of the thread. And as I said, I'm using bright blue thread so that you can see it on camera. I'm keeping the floss itself in line with the guideline that I originally drew. When I get to the opposite end, I'm going to stop and cut my threads. Now I'm ready to start line 2. Can you see how my blue thread is stitching just on either side of the floss? The pink floss will blend in with my fabric, and it's adding a wonderful texture. Now what I'm going to do is start my second row right up against the floss. I'm using now the edge of the floss as my guideline for my second row. I've taken a few stitches and my needle is on the right side. I'm going to insert the floss underneath the presser foot once again and stitch. Notice I'm holding the floss far forward from the needle. That gives me more of a guideline to move it to the right and the left. The right side of my presser foot is following along the original floss and stitching line, and that's what I'm using to keep the second line straight. Now, as you can see, at the opposite end of my fabric, I've already done my couching lines here. These were pink floss couched with pink threads. Now I'm ready to cut out my template pieces. As you can see, what I've done here is started in the exact same way, taken a few stitches on my fabric, inserted my floss under my presser foot, and now I'm just randomly stitching circles for a more organic look than the straight lines. I'm using the green paisley fabric and a piece of green floss, and I have a pale green thread in my sewing machine. I've reduced my stitch length slightly so that my stitches are closer together so that I can negotiate the curves, and I have my stitch width set exactly the same, just so that it stitches on either side of my floss. Now what I'm going to do is just randomly allow my floss to walk around the fabric. Notice I'm holding the floss a distance, not up close, but a distance from here, and I'm keeping it in a straight line with my presser foot. My offhand is what's negotiating those turns for me. I can use just my fingertips to turn the fabric. I can cross over and go in any direction I would like. There is no pattern to this. I'm just randomly walking around the fabric. I'm using about a 10-inch square of fabric, and the reason for that is because when I negotiate the turns, I don't have a lot of fabric to try and push through my machine. It's much easier to do a small piece than it is to do a large piece.